So what is ICD-10? ICD-10-CM diagnosis codes translate a patient's health condition from words into an alphanumeric code, which permits easy storage, retrieval, and standardization of data for analysis. ICD codes represent the only nationally mandated standard defining the patient's health state and the institutional procedures to help improve or maintain that health state. These codes are critically important in helping to make healthcare information interoperable across healthcare stakeholders and, to some degree, across national borders. Compared to the 30-year-old ICD-9-CM code set now in use in the United States, ICD-10-CM provides for greater definition of the details of the patient's condition, including severity, complexity, comorbidities, complications, and other important parameters of the patient's health state. The updated HIPAA legislation requires all providers, payers, and clearinghouses to comply with the use of the new ICD-10-CM standard for all healthcare transactions submitted electronically. Failure to implement ICD-10 effectively will slow down and possibly strangle your revenue cycle, leaving you reliant on unpredictable and time-consuming appeals to collect hard-earned reimbursement. By taking steps now to prepare yourself, by strengthening your documentation to meet the clinical requirements of ICD-10, you'll be in a much better position to serve your patients and yourself when the transition occurs. The International Classification of Diseases, or ICD, provides for a wide variety of signs, symptoms, abnormal findings, complaints, and social circumstances that may be part of a diagnosis on health-related records. The purpose of the ICD is to promote international comparability in the collection, classification, processing, and presentation of health statistics. ICD is a truly international language. Even though there is variation in the number and types of diagnosis codes for different countries, all national modifications of the ICD code sets are based on the common platform and structure of the ICD standard. For instance, regardless of your native language, ICD-10 code category I-10 translates as hypertension. Revisions are made to the ICD periodically so that the classification reflects advances in medical science. The 10th revision of the ICD came into use in World Health Organization member states beginning in 1994. The United States is one of a handful of WHO member countries that has not already fully implemented ICD-10. The ICD-10-CM code set provides improved granularity of the codes. This means that the documentation you provide will be almost directly translated into these codes, allowing much greater levels of detail, including anatomy and pathophysiology for a particular patient. As you will see, this has been achieved by extending the codes from a maximum of 5 characters, as in ICD-9-CM, to a maximum of 7 characters. We can see this code expansion when we look at this case of a patient with an open fracture of the femoral shaft that presents in September 2014 that will be described by a set of ICD-9 codes. If we now assume that the same case is presented after October 1, 2014, the condition is the same, but how we describe that same case in ICD-10 has substantially changed. In addition, it can be seen that in ICD-9, there are a total of 16 codes available to describe all of the variations and fractures of the femur, whereas in ICD-10, there are over 1,530 codes to accommodate significant differences in the types of fractures of the femur. ICD-10-CM is organized into 21 chapters, classified by epidemic diseases, constitutional or general diseases, developmental diseases, injuries, and local diseases arranged by site. In some cases, codes may also be organized by body area. For example, there are separate chapters for the eye and adnexa, and for the ear and mastoid process. Like ICD-9-CM, ICD-10-CM includes both a tabular listing of codes and an alphabetic index arranged alphanumerically. The organization of these documents is similar to the current documentation structure in ICD-9. The ICD-10-CM classification begins with the 3-character category, which includes related conditions. The first chapter of a category is always a letter. The second and third characters may be either numbers or letters, which complete the code category or rubric. The fourth character further defines the site, etiology, and manifestation or stage of the disease or condition. A fifth or sixth character represents the most accurate level of specificity, such as location and laterality. This identifies more specificity regarding the patient's condition or diagnosis. Certain ICD-10-CM categories have applicable 7th character extenders. The 7th character extenders can be letters or numbers and change the meaning of the description within different categories. Codes that have fewer than 6 characters but require a 7th character extender to complete the code require placeholders. The placeholder is always represented with an X. This placeholder allows for future code expansion. This expansion can be seen throughout ICD-10-CM. Codes can be directly mapped from a single ICD-9-CM code to a single ICD-10-CM code. For example, the ICD-9-CM code 733.6, Tietz's disease, maps directly to the ICD-10-CM code M94.0, chondrocostal junction syndrome. Other codes require additional information to map for possible solutions. For example, the ICD-9-CM code 649.63, uterine size date discrepancy, antepartum condition or complication, requires information about weeks in pregnancy to map. There are 3 options: 026.841, uterine size date discrepancy, first trimester; 026.842, uterine size date discrepancy, second trimester; and 026.843, uterine size date discrepancy, third trimester. Some codes require significantly more specificity and map into many more ICD-10-CM code set selections. For example, the ICD-9-CM code 962.9, poisoning by hormones and synthetic substitutes, has 16 corresponding ICD-10-CM codes, requiring information about both the cause of the poisoning and the type of encounter. Cause and type are 2 of only a limited number of recurring concepts found in ICD-10, making the clinical documentation process more manageable. As an example, there are more than 1,800 codes for fractures of the radius, yet only a limited number of unique medical concepts related to radial fractures. As a result, documentation can be simplified using a decision tree process to narrow down the concepts for each case that will correspond to the appropriate ICD-10-CM code. Codes are also grouped logically into code families, and most specialists will not need to use the entire book. This logic becomes crucial to the functionality of ICD-10-CM. As we move beyond the 3-character code classifications to 4-character classifications, 5-character classifications, and further, the code descriptors become increasingly precise. These subclassifications allow for the great number and precision of ICD-10-CM codes as compared to ICD-9-CM. These increasingly fine subclassifications are also what dictate the need for documentation that specifically recognizes